over into the preparing for the future segment of our conversation. Tell me about the work you do with Community Climate Lab. Was it Climate Community Lab?
You got it. It's a Climate Community Lab.
Yes.
So we are a workforce development community engagement organization that supports for-profit entities and governments really in providing clean energy workforce training. So we offer courses in air source heat pump installation. We've done things in the past around energy auditing, EV charging, solar panel installation. Essentially, we have a partner organization. When they get construction projects, part of the deal is that they need to, primarily these projects are attached to government incentives, federal and state incentives. When they go into urban communities, a certain percentage of those members of that community need to be trained in doing the actual construction work. So my organization trains those members of the communities to actually be able to come in and do the work in their community, right? So it's like one of the things that we know, it's kind of a for us, with us model, right? Like not entirely by us, because we are coming in outside and partnering and training in the technology. But it's really about providing economic mobility so that if I am a homeowner in a low income or low to moderate income, how we call it, community, I don't need to call the repair person from 2 towns over to come and fix my heat pump, right? Like Mr. Joe down the street is trained to fix my heat pump, and I keep those dollars circulating within my community. Mr. Joe still has a job, right? And it could potentially be building a business for himself. And that community, which previously was suffering from health disparities, it's hot. Like we know that urban communities are hotter, more pollution, more health concerns. All of that is associated with poor communities with poor climates. I'll suffice it to say that. So one of the things that we work to do by bringing clean energy solutions to that community is to provide relief, environmental justice, environmental equity, and economic mobility for those who've traditionally been X'd out of that work.
So you mentioned in the last episode that you are having to train people in a way in which they have a wide variety of skills now. When we project out to the future, 2050, 25 years from now, half of all jobs as we know them are going to be gone. And with the rise of AI and augmented reality and all of these different things, there are questions about what sort of skills are people going to need to thrive 25 years from now. At that point, I'll be pushing 60. I'm done at that point. Like, I'm not trying to learn
I'll be
something
retired.
new. I'm is who I'm is. All right. But I think about the youngest members of Gen Z who in 25 years will be pushing 40 or they'll be 40. And as someone who is pushing 40, I recognize that's the prime of your career. And if you spend the next 25 years not developing the skills that you need, you are going to look up at 40 where at 40, you don't even hit your peak amount of money you're going to earn yet. So if you find yourself unskilled and underdeveloped, you're going to be screwed. So what are you and your team looking at as, hey, these are the skills that people need in this changing landscape 25 now?
Yeah, I would say, and it could just be a function of the sector that I'm in, but we need to really develop and nurture a love of STEM. So much of our work is science and math related, and it's interesting. I'm always blown away. So the population that we serve and that we train are folks who are formerly incarcerated, people who are justice involved, people, it could be people from other countries for whom English is a second or third language. And so these are folks who traditionally, and then we definitely have like on a host of ranges of people who have just not been successful in school, right? Traditionally. And so I am always blown away when I see, a student who is looking at psychrometry. Google it. I learned what it was too when I took this job. And
Go ahead, tell
so,
my people what that is.
And so, nope, it's the bonus point. Let's see who knows what psychrometry is.
Can you at least spell it for us?
It's Psy, Psy, Crometry. Yes, I think that's the spelling. So
Psychometry.
you can put it in the
We'll
show
fix it in
notes. The word
post.
in the show notes. Yeah, yeah. So I think that, and they're able to do it, right? They're able to calculate voltage. They're able to, and some of these folks don't have a high school diploma, but they can calculate voltage, right? They're able to tell you how many BTUs your air conditioner needs to be based on the square footage in the room that you're in, right? But like, and so that to me says that there's brilliance that's been untapped, or worse, has been stepped upon. And so, one of the things that we do in our work is that we do a lot of work around building our trainees' confidence in themselves, in their ability to do the work. We do study groups, we have celebrations throughout the course. Like, we really try to create an environment that is affirming, so that as they go and do this thing that they may be afraid to do, they actually begin to feel incremental levels of success, such that they can finish and take their certifying exam that allows them to be an industry recognized professional, right? And so I think that we traditionally have failed we failed all our kids when it comes to STEM, right? Our affluent white kids too. We have failed them when it comes
Did
to
you
STEM.
see Ronnie Chang, this comedian, just put out a Netflix special, and in the special, he's like, I meet all these people who are like, I would die for my country. And he's like, well,
Yes!
can you do math for your country? Can you do your homework? Like, no, I want to die. I'm gonna insert
Yes!
the clip in here, because he's talking about all the ways in which
Yes.
we are failing as a nation and in which we are falling behind. And yet our patriotism says, I'm gonna die before I do math.
Make America great again. They have a point. America is not doing so great right now, right? Our kids' math scores are down. Our children's science scores are down. When judged according to international metrics, healthcare system's not doing so great. Wealth gap disparities increasing exponentially. There was an implied promise to a generation of Americans that if you do certain things, work hard, go to college, be a good person, you would have certain outcomes. And those outcomes didn't materialize for majority of people because baby boomers entrenched in decision-making positions lowered the capital gains tax so that their net worth essentially compounds year after year. And post-World War II, U.S. leadership traded the domestic manufacturing industry for national security by making the U.S. dollar the default international trade currency, which gave America the ability to impose economic sanctions on foreign countries through a U.S. financial banking system, but consequently increased the value of the U.S. dollar astronomically, which made it impossible for anyone to manufacture anything in America. Although the logic at the time was that Americans were supposed to upskill en masse away from the menial manufacturing jobs. But everyone here's too much of a dumbass to stay in school, so we just traded domestic manufacturing to Asia and the rest of the world at the expense of working class families. But if you don't read enough, it comes out as, let's go, Brandon! And it's like you have a point, but you don't have the vocabulary to describe your reality because you didn't read enough. You gotta keep reading. Beyond the hashtag, there's a book behind the word. You gotta keep going. You can go at your own pace, but you gotta finish the required reading, otherwise you can't have a conversation. It's just, we're all catching up to each other. Very, very passionate people, my MAGA friends. And I respect their passion to some extent. I do. They're like, man, Ronnie, I love America. I would die for this country. And I believe them. I believe they love America. And I believe they would die for this country, which is very admirable. But it's like, man, you're willing to die for your country. Why aren't you willing to learn math? Also for your country. Like do both for your country. Because I know you want to die for your country, but we're losing the engineering jobs to Asia right now. So we need less people to die for the country. You need more people to do their homework for the country. Like, do your homework for your country. Like, actually sit down and show the working and like that's a more efficient way to show your patriotism. Like, I know if you take that I want to die energy and you put it into homework, you will fucking top the school. I'm telling you, it's sky's the limit. You'll solve a lot of problems, you'll create a lot of jobs, you'll increase the GDP. Okay, just like do your homework for your country. I'd rather die. I thought so. I thought that might be the case. Dying's easy. Math is hard.
Yep.
And I think that's a problem for us as a nation when you think about we are 17th, 18th, 19th, somewhere around there in terms of happiness
We're in the
index.
middle. Yeah.
We're not great at healthcare. We're not great at education. We're constantly falling behind. Our military is having a hard time recruit because we're all out of shape and have a whole host of diseases. And so I'm projecting out 25 years from now. And in all of these categories, what do we have left? Who are we if we're not attacking these things? Now, some of them are personal and people have to, I hate this, like pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but there are some things in which we need to make decisions for ourselves. But there are other things, a lot of other things. I would say most other things that calls for collective action. And I would argue as someone who I'm not this like the government needs to fix everything, but I think our government has a responsibility to its people. We need to fix some of this. And I think education, like if you want to be the best country in the world, why do we not go out of our way to educate all of our children so that we have the best shot at that?
Right.
How much untapped potential and talent is sitting in our over-policed communities, but the schools are underfunded?
Right. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think that there are things, most definitely, there are things that we need to own that's ours. And there are a lot of systemic things that have been in play and morphing and expanding and further cementing since this country's inception. And that is not ours to own, especially those of us who were not brought here voluntarily.
That Carnival cruise ship to slavery didn't have options on where you got dropped off.
Right. Exactly.
And so, all right. So looking at that, right? Because now, all right, now we're in the open-ended space of the podcast, which I love.
Yeah.
By 2050, Black wealth is projected to be 0. Where you are in Boston, right? Black wealth traditionally sits at like 10% of white wealth. In Boston, it's $250,000 for a white household, $8 for a Black household. Not 8,000, 80,000.
Yeah.
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the question is, when we look at Black wealth, when we look at the maternal mortality rate being double that for Black women than it is for white women, when we look at you pick a quality of life metric, there is not a single one in which we do not, from your vantage point, with all your degrees, your education, and your thoughts and the work you're doing in our communities specifically. Because when we talk urban communities, let's be honest, like they are disproportionately Black. So we're thinking about the outcomes for our people. What is your hope? What are you hoping to see 25 years from now for us? And what is your best guess on how we get there?
I think that I want to see empowered collaborations.
What does that mean?
So I want to see us, so as context, when you read a lot of these business books and you have coaches and all these different things, right? One of the things that they tell you is when you're just starting out, they tell you partner with other people. Go after bigger contracts by partnering together. I want to see people in urban communities. You can have your own, but learning how to work and build wealth together. And there are different permutations of that. What I also want to see is less conversation around Black men, Black women, who's doing what and who's failing who when. And like, let's actually have collectivist conversations around what are the skills, how do we help each other learn the skills and get the resources necessary to push our communities forward, right? So these like circular, unhelpful conversations, I think actually should become study groups on how do we learn to use psychrometry effectively? How do we learn
still don't know what that is.
You will when you look it up. And you will when you look it up. It's a great word, right? Like, how do we leverage our unique skills and talents to build our communities forward? How do we take care of each other again? When I was growing up, everybody on the block knew who I was, knew whose grandchild and child and niece that I was, right? And looked out for me. We don't have that. And that's necessary, right? How can I go and build the resources and build these empires and build these multiple streams of income? Am I going to do that at the expense of my children? But if I'm in an environment where we are all working towards that, we're working towards this goal, if we are learning how to trust each other again, learning how to build with each other again, that is what's going to save our communities, right? Like, to some degree, there is a dismantling of systems that needs to happen. But we also need to remember that once you dismantle the system, it's got to be replaced with something. Nature abhors a vacuum. So what are you going to replace it with? If you don't do anything to build yourself up or build the knowledge, skills, and resources to create a new system, you're just going to replicate what was there before.
Anti-vision is not vision. Simply running
Exactly.
from something only leads you right back to it if you don't know what you're running toward.
I love that. You are absolutely right. Anti-vision is not vision.
Just make sure you cite me.
Sure.
So how do we do that? Right? Like that's the $1 million question, because especially in this digital age, we are being pulled apart more than ever before. And if you've paid attention to Twitter, Instagram, whatever the kids are on these days, it has been nothing but arguments. And I'm going to talk specifically in our community. I'm not talking about everybody else. But these conversations about pulling us apart, like Black Twitter, what was the debate for like 7 years? How much should a first date be? Like right now, it's, popping the balloon.
You can't go to right? You can't go to the Cheesecake Factory. I love the Cheesecake Factory.
Listen, as someone with a refined palate, if you take me to the Cheesecake Factory, I will be personally offended. But I'm bougie, and that's fine. I get it. I know who I am. But as we're consistently being pulled further apart, and I honestly think we're wasting our time with a lot of these silly social media debates, which I think what is often put on us as educated Black folk, as they like to say, is, oh, you just want to be too serious all the time. We just need to have fun. And it's like, well, no, we want to have fun too, but at the same time, where is the space for these conversations that don't devolve into arguments about how many stamps are on your passport? And you remember what was the blue sign? You should be here.
You should be here.
That doesn't devolve into now, let's just join the pyramid scheme.
Right. Yeah. So I think, there are a couple things. I do believe that in this era, I think that we need to have multiple streams of income. I think that when we look at our economy, when we look at, and that is something that I think that Xers, maybe not Xers, but definitely is contrary to the boomer ideology, right? Where there's like company loyalty. You join a company and you're there for 25 years, you get a gold watch and retirement plan, right? That does not exist for us. Social Security will not exist for us. And so we need to, and this is part of the reason why I say my one advice for all young people to take your financial health seriously is that we need multiple streams of income. We also need to leverage our resources. I am very big on joining like networks, getting coaching, talking to colleagues in the field, asking questions, and those kinds of things, right? I'm also really big on the support that I had. My accountant is Black, my staff is Black, currently right now in both climate community lab and in my own business, everybody's Black, right? Like, and so I create the space, creating opportunities, right? And also making it okay for the job that you do with me to not be your end all be all, right? For me, I'm very big on pushing the people that work with and for me to figure out what is there, if they need that, right? I don't want to impose that on people, but if they're curious about how to leverage their non-working time to provide economic advancement, to increase their economic mobility, I'm all for that, right? I think for me, it's about operating in excellence in the time that you have. And so that requires time management. It requires being able to prioritize effectively, right? And then also having conversations around when you need help. So
the development of some executive skills that this generation is lacking.
Yeah. I think other ways that we need to do this, the other ways that we can do it. And this is the thing why I think that, like, when I talk about like care for each other, there are some people, so economic mobility and care for community actually can go hand in hand. And I think that we forget that. There's a lot of money to be made in home daycare centers. There's a lot of money to be made in cleaning services. There's a lot of money to be made. Cody Sanchez all the time talks about buying the boring businesses and how she became a multimillionaire buying boring businesses. We can buy boring businesses. Why not?
It's funny. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and sometimes you know things, but you need to hear someone say it for you to go, oh yeah, duh. And so I'm listening to this podcast about entrepreneurship. And the guy in the podcast says, I don't know how to do anything, but I've built multiple 10, $20 million businesses because the job of the entrepreneur is the organizer.
Right.
You organize, and then you get
That's
the
right.
people with the skills to do the thing. So someone
Right.
listening to this might be thinking, well, I hear you, Dr. Taylor, but I don't know anything about running a daycare. Sure, but I'm sure you know somebody who does. Your job is to organize, get the paperwork in order, get the space, and now you let that person go run it. Your cut is coming off the top. What do I know about running a laundromat? You don't gotta know anything, but you buy it and you hire the people who can run it for you. Your job is to organize. Right. And
exactly.
I recognize that not everybody has that predilection towards organization. But if you do, be a little octopus. Organize 8 very different things that you know nothing about, but you know 8 people who do, and let them go do it.
Yeah, exactly. And, it could be, you can also create partnership scenarios, right? So if there is someone who is an expert, right now I'm reading The Business of Expertise, right? And if there is someone who is expert, right? Maybe they come in, like, what is the value of that expertise? Is that like for those who don't want to organize, but they know they're really good at running a laundromat, right? We'll keep with that example. I don't know the first thing about setting up, getting on LegalZoom and setting up an organization and getting articles of organization and getting an EIN number and all that stuff. But I can tell you when the machine is broken. I can tell you when they need to be replaced. I can tell you, what our inventory needs to look like, right? That might be a collaboration. And we shouldn't be afraid of those collaborations. Now you get a good attorney and you have a solid partnership agreement in place, right? Like, you want to be smart about these things, but it doesn't mean the collaboration can't happen. And so we think about, I have to do everything myself. I have to start this business myself. I have to do all these things myself. You don't have to do things yourself. And in reality, those who are sitting in the 0.1%, they do a lot of things together because they recognize that a piece of something is more than a whole of nothing.
Mm-hmm. I think Outliers is a really great book on this. Malcolm Gladwell really points out to us that no one gets to where they are on their own.
That's right.
It's ironic because the American dream, the story you're told, is always about the self-made person. Mm-hmm. No one is self-made. I would make this argument that we are meant for community. We are meant for each other. We are not. No man is an island, which I think maybe that was Henry David Thoreau or somebody. But no man is an island. And if this is true, then how do we tap into community? How do we lean into each other? And I say, especially for us as Black people, where our history in this country has been nothing but pulling and tearing us apart. And to this day, we will find ways, because I think as people by nature, and this is all people, we are tribal, right? Before there was slavery, you had people who looked exactly like each other, enslaving each other and fighting each other because your tribe wasn't my tribe. So how do we find our tribes now? How do we find our people?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the work, right? So when I think about from the CEO space, right, there are a couple of places that I would recommend. If your city, state, or town has a chamber of commerce, joining that chamber of commerce as a member is a good opportunity to meet people. A number of nonprofits have professional associations. They either have national, state, some have their national organizations with state and local chapters. Join those chapters.
This is free game, people.
Yeah. Also, if you got a master's degree, doctorate degree, even your undergrad, go back and call on people. Girl, you an accountant now? Listen, I'm trying to do this thing. What do I do? Oh, you offer accounting services? Okay. Listen, I need to hire you. Right. And I'm not begging for a discount. I'm going to pay you what you're worth, because in the same way I want someone to value me, I value you. Right. Like, there are a lot of ways to create community. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I first started working in the New York City Department of Ed, or now New York City Public Schools, was that you can find community anywhere. right? And so, there's a piece of scripture that says, if you want friends, make yourself friendly, right? And so part of what I do as a coach is like help my CEOs become friendly, right? And what that means in a professional sense, so they can get what they need.
Yeah. I am recommitting to not being good at golf, because that's just not possible, but being passable enough that I can start to meet some people on the course. Because I was talking to
Yep.
somebody about some nonprofit funding, and he's a head of development for a large organization. And he's like, CJ, go play golf. Join. Like, he's like, listen, you don't have to be good. You just have to be able to be in the room, because that's when you start to meet people and you start to
Yep.
have those conversations. So,
Yep.
Charisse, I thank you for joining me on Tell Me More, for giving me all of my content for the month of January. I greatly appreciate that. Tell the people, where can they find you?
Sure. So you can find me on my website, connectingforward.com, or you can send me an email at info@connectingforward.com. Happy to connect.
I love it. As you start to look toward the future, 2025, what do you hope to see in this world?
I hope to see progress. I think that and I mean that in a very personal way, right? Not in the systemic progress, people who have been that's where my heart is, right? People who've been marginalized moving forward. I want people to be able to develop the skill to identify and celebrate their progress, right? A win is a win, no matter how small it is. And I want us to also reconnect with joy. I really want us to reconnect with joy.
Been doing
Because
a lot of writing about joy.
Yeah. This is the thing, right? We spend a lot of time, I think, that whether we are advocates, we are counselors, and any sort of helping transformative profession, we spend a lot of time with a problem, a lot of time taking a problem and turning it on every single angle and like inspecting it and all that other stuff, right? That we've become very comfortable. And I think part of the reason the country is in the state that it's in is because we've become very comfortable with suffering. And so I want to challenge people to become very comfortable with joy and become very comfortable with positivity and watch your life change.
There are some Socratic and Platonic scholars who would argue with you about the necessity of suffering for joy. Yeah.
You'll see your life change. I promise that.
Well, Charisse, thank you for joining me on Tell Me More. Listen, if you want to stay engaged with this conversation, drop in the comments. What was some of your favorite points over the last 3 episodes? What are some ways in which you're trying to connect with joy? And please stay tuned as I come back next month and ask you to tell me.